All right. Hello, everyone. It's Rayos the Hermit broadcasting live from my Hermit Cove on a nice sunny Friday morning. Still got a bit of snow on the roads, which is rather I should say ice, which is not fun to drive on, but is what it is. In any case, we are starting the last stream in my I just lost my job, so I'm finally watching all the videos in my YouTube watch later list, whatever the title is. As I mentioned on Wednesday, yeah, it was a fun, I guess, project. Fun thing to try out, but it hasn't really been working out in terms of views. Haven't really been getting much. Often even my writing streams will get more views than these streams. So it's like, why am I waste my time with this editing the videos and getting them up on YouTube when I can just be focusing more on that? But yeah, like I said, it was a fun thing to try out. Definitely learned a thing or two about myself and how to yap, I guess you could say. That's good. But yeah, don't really have much else to add, so you can just get right into it. Okay, The Color That Ruined Filmmaking and Our Homes by Jesse Senko. Sounds like a Lovecraft title. I myself, as an artist and writer, as an artist and writer, something I've been seeing more and more is just I don't know what you call it, like homogenization, I guess, or like modern media. Like what I mean is like designing things for the widest set of displays or viewing environments for like different devices, kind of thing, what have you, all that sort of thing. Just totally foregoing being really good at one thing for being okay at everything. And it's like, that's not to say there's no place for lowest common denominators. That would, taken off the table would itself be a kind of homogenization. But, it's, it'd be nice to have a little more diversity in, a little more diversity in the sense of having more of these high contrast, made for one specific thing style of films or like art or writings, whatever. Not trying to make everything work for everything. It's doing that. Like I said, you become a jack of all trades, master of none. And while it has its uses, there's always gonna be space for the master of one. Yeah. Before we get in this, I will check out that comment that I just got. Yep. Hey, Thief RBG. Good morning. How's it going? Get my notes, putting them always on top of the screen, so I can easily write. Let's get started.
What if I told you that in 1992, a visual thread connecting our cave-dwelling ancestors to Hollywood's golden age was shattered by a single color? I believe.
Okay. Very provocative opening. I mean, I'm willing to believe it. We're gonna spend the next 20 minutes, evidencing it. So we'll see. We'll see. But I'm gonna give some grace and assume just uncritically that that's the truth.
We're in the middle of a digital revolution that's much bigger than the film to digital transition. One that gives us so much choice that we're often, myself included, making the wrong one. But fear not, for in recent...
That's a common... I think that's also something that I should have brought up in my, I guess, intro. It was just like, too much choice that creates a situation where, like you're likely to choose the wrong option. Like there's only one perfect choice and like infinity of wrong choices to like really like, I guess, oversimplify it.
Researching this video, I have found peace, and I've built a framework around choosing the right stupid LED. Hi, I'm Jesse. I'm a filmmaker and photographer, and also a little bit of a curmudgeon, because when I walk through my neighborhood at night and I see the choices people are making with their LEDs, I get a little bothered. And then I recently watched the original Blade Runner. It's where your brain goes to when you hear the word cyberpunk. When I compare Blade Runner to the lights I see around me in content and around the perimeter of young people's rooms, one feels timeless and rich, and the other just feels cheap. We're at a point where we definitely have more, but it took me a lot of research to convince myself that more is better. And I can't help but notice the daylight LEDs people have in their homes. That relaxing blue glow makes you feel like you're at a bad job interview or possibly in a tanning bed. So relaxing. I love feeling like I'm at the dentist moments before I try to fall asleep. Christmas time fills me with a lot less joy these days, partially because I am a Grinch, but also because of the Christmas lights flickering as I drive by and mainlining saturation right directly into my eyeballs. Yes, I understand the environmental benefits of LEDs and I support them. My house is all LED. But I do think that certain LEDs could become even more energy efficient if they were just switched off. My mind drifts and thinks, what if, similar to what you need to buy pesticides or dynamite, you need a permit to buy an LED that is cooler.
What is the point of this? Like, it's not... I'm not aware of any holiday that's about just white strips of light. Seems a little intense for a porch lighting, but what do I know?
4,000 Kelvin. I'll talk about Kelvin in a second. And yes, of course, I'm whining, but it does make me wonder why I hate certain LEDs so much. So we have to go back.
I wonder that as well.
Before the LEDs were invented, back to pre-civilization, caveman times. Personally, I consider the time before I bought a Japanese-style bidet pre-civilization, but that's for another video.
Everything I've heard about bidets is made me more and more interested, more and more curious or whatever. What if you? It sounds like once you get one of them bidets, you are You suddenly realize you were living your life as a caveman. So that reaction that you just had is it sounds warranted.
City light was mainly the sun, and artificial light was fire. Torches, candles, oil lamps, all which emitted a warm orange glow. This warm light is the signature of home. It's linked to the moments before we go to sleep. And this warm glow carried through the electrical revolution into incandescent bulbs, which are just electricity passed through a tungsten filament, causing it to glow, and are the foundation of tungsten lights used for all of cinema's existence. The tungsten bulb gave us cinema's golden age. I remember the first time I stumbled into the physics of color temperature. Not to brag, but I was interviewing an actual Power Ranger, and I brought my incandescent light kit with dimmers to set, and I hooked them up to some lamps that were in the frame. And I was surprised to notice that as I dimmed the lights down, the incandescent bulbs, they got warmer, and as I brightened them up, they got cleaner white, less warm. I remember this being my first practical demonstration of the Kelvin scale and truly understanding what it was. Kelvins are just another temperature scale, like Celsius or the extremely inferior Fahrenheit. I am just joking, but like all good jokes, they're rooted in truth. Back to Kelvins. 0 degrees Kelvin is the absolute zero we read about in space. So cold, all thermal movement stops at a molecular level. Like any temperature scale, move up the scale and things get hotter. Picture an iron ball getting heated. At a certain point, it starts to glow deep red, and then as it's heated more, it glows more white. You could say white hot. It's why tiny classic twinkle lights are so warm in color, or think about a gas stove flame or a soldering torch. and how as the flame burns cleaner and hotter, it turns blue. It's a bit confusing how the warmer the object gets thermally, the cooler it gets visually. From this point on, we'll just focus on the visual warmth of light. But what I love so much about the Kelvin scale is its deep human connection to us. We hunted and gathered under the clean light of the midday sun, and we shared meals and told stories lit by the light of a flame. As a kid, I would love it when the power went out and we lit candles, hoping the power would never come on.
Damn, I cannot relate to that. Yeah, I don't really remember too much how I felt as a kid when the power went out. I mean, it happened several times, not just when I was a kid, but also when I was an adult. But, I mean, I don't know. It was always kind of annoying because it meant you couldn't do a lot of things you were used to doing. I guess I am not a Grinch. I am not a curmudgeon like our dear Jesse here.
Another really important aspect to incandescent light. It is full spectrum. When you look at the rainbow, you're getting a really helpful deconstruction of the components of visual light. If you laid out all of the colors the human eye can perceive on a chart, you get the classic 1931 hit, the International Commission on Illumination's color space chart. And these are all of the colors that are available for you to see. Well, this is a representation of because you are seeing it on a screen. It's why photos never feel as vibrant as being there. We can also look at light in a graph based on its wavelength. If you superimpose midday sunlight over it, you can see that it's a beautiful full spectrum light. Full spectrum light gives our world color because it contains every color. When you see a green leaf, the red and blue parts of the color spectrum are being absorbed into the leaf, but the leaf is reflecting the green back to your eyes. That's why a lot of modern greenhouses use grow lights that look purplish. Why waste electricity shining green on the leaves, shine more red and blue for it to do its photosynthesis? I think it's wild that plants literally need color to grow. Incandescents are full spectrum too. They push towards the warmer end of the scale, but look how nice and gentle this curve is. They cover the whole spectrum. So now we understand the spectrum, and we know what the...
Yeah, I'm anticipating, well, I mean, I don't really do anticipate. I know that LEDs have a much more restricted spectra, I guess, which is an interesting idea, because it's kind of like, there's a bit of a yin and yang there, where it's like, I was saying at the beginning that there's this issue of like homogenization of media and content, but it's like interesting that it's being caused by this very, very intense, specific focus on one color overall. Of like, it's literally the opposite of homogenization in that case, and it's like, well, I guess what the issue is kind of what I mentioned, where it was like getting rid of homogenization would itself, getting rid of homogenization in favor of more diverse or more contrast would itself be a reduction in contrast, its own homogeneity. So then I guess the idea would be that by taking one arbitrary color and making that I guess a monoculture, then yeah, you're creating homogeneity. You're taking away contrast. Well, okay, probably not taking away contrast, but definitely creating monoculture, which is generally never a good thing.
Kelvin scale,
at least
feels
not at
like
scale
in the real world. Here's the Kelvin scale overlaid, that CIE chart. Two things fundamentally subconsciously tied to our evolution. And that's why it's unsettling when we deviate, when we unmoor ourselves from these standards. When flora...
I don't want to just flat out disagree, but that's something that I'm always a little leery of, the idea that like
consciously tied to our evolution. And that's why it's
stuff like Evo Psych, stuff like this.
When we unmoor ourselves from these standards.
I mean, it's not like there aren't like studies showing that, like, I don't know, going to, if you're going to sleep, warm lights are better than cool lights. But I guess yeah, I guess I'm taking some issue with the like phrasing of it as like this as if it's like this, I don't know, like fairy tale-esque kind of like it goes against our natural order of things, and so obviously only bad will come from that kind of thing. Where it's like I have a hard time digesting that rhetoric, I guess. But
Fluorescents were developed. They deviated from this scale and were described as sickly. When a human with an instinct for what another human looks like under full spectrum light.
I mean, obviously there are people who like care about this sort of stuff. I mean, he's describing himself as someone like that, and also describing people who, when the incandescent lights were first developed, whereas they saw them as kind of sickly because they were different. But I mean, given that not everybody has that reaction to things like that, I mean, me being one of them, I mean, it does kind of I get the impression it's partly a personality thing, or maybe not personality is the right word, but like it's not as universal as something that we would expect from something that is natural and it's like baked into our evolutionary history or whatever. So that's
along the Kelvin scale, looked at another human under early fluorescent lights, a warning light went off that said, that person looks sick. These lights deviated in both Kelvin and spectrum. Many fluorescents emit a bare minimum of wavelength coverage. Spikes in the blue, green, and red mixed together give a barely passable facsimile of natural light. But with missing gaps between uneven spikes, it meant that colorful objects often look duller and greener under this low-quality lighting than they would in daylight. This includes the human face, which, if you're a photographer or a retoucher, you know that the human face reflects every light of the rainbow. This is where we started to pay attention to a lighting fixture's color rendering index, or CRI, how much of the spectrum it can reflect back, to force us to decide how real we need a human to look. Proper filmmaking, needing that punch of incandescent light, could ignore any need to measure CRI. It flatters skin and it creates a simple unity on screen. Its only downsides are its massive power consumption and the lights are really hot. Even fluorescents, they filled in a lot of their spectral gaps. A big popular brand of lights that I've used in the past are KinoFlows, no relation to AntFlow. And I don't want to leave out HMI lights. I'm not really going to talk about them, but they are a daylight balanced light. HMIs mixed with tungsten give you a really nice balance of tungsten, warm light, and daylight. But then came the Pandora's box moment, and finally learned whether ignorance was bliss. It happened in 2 dates. The discovery of the blue LED in 1992 finally completed the Holy Trinity. The blue LED paired with the red and green LED gave us RGB light, opening Pandora's box so we could render nearly every color in LED light. It paved the way for incredible technology like the screen you're probably watching this video on with its RGB pixels, but it also paved the way for my nemesis, those clean white or bright white LEDs that crept their way into our neighbors and our families' homes. Not our homes, right? You wouldn't.
I love how he's talking about this like it's some infectious agent, like it's a fucking alien invasion.
White LEDs in your home. And this brings us to the Christmas light problem that I hinted at
conceit,
the
I guess.
beginning. Alec over at Technology Connections has been perennially making videos about our shared hatred for LEDs, specifically Christmas LEDs. I hate them, not just because they flicker like crazy. You'll often find me waving my hand under the LED lights at the hardware store trying to find a set that don't flicker. But more importantly, because they are what you call a line source emitter. This means if we go back to our spectrum chart, a blue LED is literally emitting only one slice of the spectrum. A harsh, lonely spike of color. A classic blue incandescent Christmas light, on the other hand, is essentially a gelled incandescent bulb. a warm, full spectrum light pushing through a colored bulb. This filter, or gel, as my friend and cinematographer Ian explained to me, filters the full spectrum of light towards blue. We perceive both an LED and a gelled incandescent bulb as blue, but in the filtered incandescent Christmas lights case, there is a soft roll-off to the tone. This gel or filter can never fully cut out the rest of the spectrum. There's a very well-known company called Lee that makes gels, essentially colored filters for the filmmaking industry. And when you visit their site, they have what they call a mired shift graph, essentially assuming a full spectrum source. This graph shows what wavelengths are making it through any specific gel. And even though some really heavy gels cut a lot of the spectrum, certain colors are never fully eliminated. This roll-off is so important. It's why one classic Christmas light can feel gentle and
Yeah, it does seem like there's an additional theme showing up that I hadn't considered in my original, talks about, contrast versus homogeneity and all that. This idea of transition, which is also very important for just any kind of art, media, content, whatever. Being you don't want these sort of, generally you don't want these sort of harsh binary transitions from like light to dark this instant. I mean, it is contrast, but to come back to the idea of homogeneity, it's like too much contrast. There's not enough dynamism that you would get from that you sacrifice when you go full monocultural homogeneity. I mean, I guess he's winning me over. I think it was just the rhetoric about deep evolution history shit was throw me off, but otherwise, the main content of his message is like, it's almost obvious. Like,
comforting, while a blue Christmas LED, to me at least, feels violent. And it took a while, but in 2015, Arri released.
I do tend to feel almost bad for people like this who seem to have such intense, visceral, instinctive reactions to shit like this. Because for me, I'm very much just like I guess blissfully ignorant. I'm just going through the world and not really experiencing any stuff like this. I mean, I guess if you want to bring in smells, those can definitely trigger very harsh reactions for me. But lights and sounds, I mean, I don't notice any LED flickering or like fluorescent bulbs. Yes, I did, and I guess still would. Like, I can perceive the flicker and both in terms, particularly in terms of like the sound and the light. But I mean, it's very easy for me to sort of ignore that kind of thing, put it out of my mental perception or whatever. Seemingly unlike people like this. So once again, like, it sounds like a hard way to go through life.
Its Sky Panel S60C. This was filmmaking's first widely accepted full RGB light. Colored LEDs or neon lights, which are both line source emitters, weren't just background accents anymore. You could use this technology to light a human face in any color. Remember how deviating a little from the Kelvin scale made people look sick? Now we can go any direction without fussing with gels, without using thousands of watts of power. This whole area becomes your playground. And at the same time, the market was flooded with cheap, low-quality RGB LEDs. I went to graphic design school, and it makes me think about how throughout history, type designers would agonize over every curve and detail of a typeface, only to have the word processor allow every poster made to be some combination of Comic Sans and papyrus.
Yep, that is another example of the idea, like modern homogenization. Everything becomes lowest common denominator.
Virus! To repeat my favorite comment on here, too much blah blah blah. Here's my point. I don't want to be a gatekeeper. The problem is that there's no gatekeeper. There's no one to say, no, that is not to spec. We now have 3 brutal line source emitters at our disposal to light any face. RGB dials have given every YouTuber and gamer the ability to line source emit blue LEDs into their face without the guardrails of gelled full spectrum light leaking through to soften the edges for our eyeballs' sake. There is so much choice, we can do whatever we want. But with so much choice, the odds are, without any knowledge, we will make the wrong choice. This bounty often doesn't actually free.
Yeah, that's another idea that I hadn't considered, but like this idea, how to phrase it, like I guess the idea that ideally, you gain access to more choice as you develop your experience and like you build up the mental architecture to to perceive these things that were always there, but you just couldn't see them because you didn't have the experience and mastery necessary to see it. But with this, what comes with this mass production from modern day products is that anyone, even a rank amateur, someone who's never done work in that field a day in their life, has access to the full gamut of options that normally only a master was even able to perceive. Like the master had to first perceive the option and then find a way to produce it in reality, whereas now all options are produced beforehand, and both the master and the beginner have access to it. But obviously, as Jesse mentioned, I mean, if you have access to all the options, then you're probably going to choose the wrong option, unless you're a master. But how are you going to get to that mastery if you're like, if we're imagining like a pathfinding game, like how are you going to get from point beginner to point master if there's more and more at every step of your journey? There's an infinitude of options instead of just whatever you can see with your current levels, powers of perception. Like the chances you're gonna take yourself to a creative dead end increase exponentially.
It more often makes us feel like we're wandering the desert instead of the thrill of going off a well-known beaten path. Understanding a visual language, a prehistoric color curve ingrained on us from the beginning of time has to mean something. It's why daylight bulbs aren't relaxing at night. Daylight means it's time to be up and productive. Why are you taking melatonin? It looks like noon in here. As technology advances and we deviate further and further from our roots in nature, neon lights as an accent color have all been replaced with a wild spectrum of color. We can choose anything. And in my case, any choice I make as a filmmaker, whether it's intentional or not, has an effect on my audience. Every choice you make in your home has an effect on your audience, your guests, your family, your lovers. In the not too distant past, the only choice, the default choice, was the right choice. Now, with no default choice, it's very easy to make the wrong choice. So my friend Ian, who I mentioned before, is a cinematographer and a home builder, and he asked me if I knew why ceilings in homes are usually white. Colored walls.
I will say, despite some of my tepid misgivings about the rhetoric, I myself do use a lot of warm lighting instead of the default like sort of off-white lighting that my rooms have. I've been doing that since at least 2017 when I had the chance to buy my own lights. I mean, the one I got right here is another warm lighting situation. The one I use in my bedroom is also warm lighting. I pretty much never use the actual overhead light that was built into the house, unless I need to take a photo of something for ID purposes or whatever. But it's I mean, it does feel more comfortable just having the warm light. I mean, because these lights themselves are like, I'm sure they're LEDs, but there's like there's a filter, that a fabric filter that the light has to go through first, and that does achieve some of that, some of the dynamic fall off that he was talking about. So I mean, I guess I also, because on an instinctual level, there is agreement with what he's saying. And just once again, the describing it in terms of all this deep evolutionary history shit. Like, I guess because that rhetoric is so often used for let's just say unsavory purposes, I tend to, when I hear it, my my sensors go off or whatever. But I guess that's me letting past trauma get in the way of listening to this person's words, like with the proper grace they deserve or whatever.
To read better with a neutral reference point. This can extend even to filmmaking. Having a neutral point of reference makes a warm light feel warmer and a cool light feel cooler, or a green light feel greener. Or even have the ultimate reference point, a human face. That is why my baseline, including right here, is always the Kelvin scale. A job that Ian and I recently shot together had a stylish cyan cast. The faces were always anchored in warm, natural light, but our highlight, the cyan, was used only as an accent. In fact, Ian chose to gel versus using an RGB mode. Overall, they've come a long way. They've improved so much. I shoot all of this channel on LEDs. The technological deficiencies that me and Ian complain about are mostly gone. Arri, which takes its time bringing products to market, knew that its first RGB light needed more than just RGB. It had an RGB plus white chipset in it. The more modern and much cheaper aperture light I'm lighting this video with has an RGB-WW chipset, which includes a warm and cool white, filling even more of the spectral gaps. Other lights are adding lime and cyan chips to fill out the spectrum even more. Much like digital has surpassed film in many technical aspects, LEDs have caught up perceptibly, at least, to incandescent light. Big cinematographers have weathered this transition well because they fundamentally understand light and would simply say not up to spec. And it's hard for some of us without that experience, without that knowledge, to make the right choice. So how do you avoid that gamer look and create a more balanced
the gamer
light?
look.
Step one is spectrum. Choose LEDs, especially RGB LEDs, with as many extra chips as you can afford. Sometimes they are called RGB-WW or RGB++. These extra chipsets fill out the spectrum. They often have higher CRI values. Step two, if there's one thing that separates cinematographers from amateurs, it's subtlety. Actually, look at your
subtlety is one of the, I mean, I would consider it one of the like fundamental characteristics of mastery, like that, and like I don't know, things like control. Like I guess that probably does sit in subtlety, but yeah, definitely, subtle, having the capacity to be subtle, to depict subtlety. I mean, that is one of the things that differentiates, an expert or a master from, a beginner, amateur, whatever you want to call it.
Your RGB fixtures as you play with the saturation in HSI mode. You can see those wider spectrum LEDs start to light up. Just putting your hand against them demonstrates that you're moving from a monochromatic spectral spike into a gentler gelled look that actually retains the spectrum and can reflect more appealing looking natural skin tone. An image recorded with a blue LED can never be color corrected. It is essentially black and white.
Why are you looking at us like that?
The other parts of the spectrum are literally never reflected back because they're never emitted. If you want a blue backlight, don't go full saturation. Retain some information. In person, it won't feel as vibrant, but our cameras are incredibly sensitive to it. This LED behind me right now, I think, is at 15% saturation. And always have a white point, a point of reference in your image. Right now, that is my face. My face hopefully looks relatively healthy. And having that as a point of reference makes this blue look
very
even bluer, even though it's only at 18% saturation. If this key light was cyan, everything would be cyan. It would be like wearing colored sunglasses. Your brain would try to bring it back to something more neutral and balanced. Rules are meant to be broken, but that presupposes that you know what the rules are. A broken rule should stand in contrast to an upheld rule. So, did the blue LED ruin filmmaking? Not really. The pros know what is to spec. But
classic
it did create more opportunities for YouTubers, young filmmakers, people like me, and homeowners to screw up. In LED's defense, they are an incredible improvement for our environment. With knowledge of the Kelvin scale, I can make informed decisions like my kitchen island LED lights that actually get warmer as you dim them, just like an incandescent bulb would. They've actually added more color to our nighttime world. Sodium vapor lights, which let us home from our friends' homes at night, are line source emitters. That orange glow was a very narrow spectrum of light. As my town converted to LED, you can actually tell that the grass under the lights are green. This is my garage right here, and I have daylight balanced LED strips on the ceiling, and it's very stimulating to get projects done out here. I'm using this theory to my advantage. It's a little sad that we need to program every new digital thing to echo an analog of the past.
Yeah,
but
I was thinking a little
the
bit.
cost of progress. The
And
LED
that often is, when you're working with, obviously in this case it's specifically digital, but I guess when you're working with these sorts of mechanical engineered systems that are supposed to be, improvements on natural, non-artificial reality. Yeah, you do end up having to program in a lot of that stuff. Like you have to ironically, you have to understand the natural even more than normal to be able to recreate it in an artificial setting. But a lot of times you can do it if you know what you're doing. So
it has something to look back on for reference, a literal golden standard. Understanding light and its color, understanding that it has meaning is a powerful tool, whether it's in your storytelling or in your lighting of your home, in your seduction of a lover. We've been connected to this Kelvin scale since caveman.
This is 2025. People are not having sex anymore. He's a little too prehistoric in that regard, but.
And a little bit of knowledge, even with LEDs, can keep this line uninterrupted. Or just make your bedroom feel like a dental waiting area. I don't have to live there.
Yeah, I'm sure that some people prefer that lighting. But yes, very interesting video. I had a fun little character arc where I started out very Baby Bird-esque, willing to accept anything, but then as soon as he started talking about prehistoric evolution history, I was like, okay, well, buddy, let's not get crazy here. But then he won me over in the end. Yeah, definitely very like a video that really hits on something that is affecting how to phrase it. It's hitting on something that's affecting all of life. I don't know. That's not, a modern, a very fundamental modern problem of the modern age, I guess, of this, this monoculturalization, this homogenization, this taking one specific thing and then forcing it to apply to everything kind of thing. And having to relearn natural cycle, so you can recreate it in the in I guess in society. Which I mean, honestly, that is kind of what it comes down to. We have to, we want to live in a society that is not at the whims of the savagery of the natural world, but we have to, just living in the city is, how to phrase it, like pure civilization is just as bad as pure wilderness. So you have to have some mix of both of them, and what that means for us civilized humans, that we have to find ways to incorporate the natural world into our society without, ideally, without the negative externalities of it. We gotta find ways to have our cake and eat it too, which is, well, obviously easier said than done. All right. Nice. I don't know what you call it, video to commentary ratio. Maybe I'm getting a little too in my head about that, but I do want to try to get better and better. Just improve it. Making these reactions transformative, even if this is the last one for the foreseeable future. No reason I'll phone it in just because it's my last day. But anyway, let's move on. Yeah, so the inner, oh god, that good lord, that voice crack was abominable. Anyway, let's start over. Yeah, so the inner demon trope, in shonen, it's kind of so endemic to the genre that it really makes you wonder how it even started at all. It's like it's not even that popular in other Japanese media, to say nothing of like the trope's basic, just total absence in Western media. But as someone who was once a shonen themselves, it is something that really captures the imagination. Like, I'm sure there's some deep socio-historical explanation for why young boys would be, drawn to stories featuring characters struggling with and eventually mastering some deep dark force within themselves. But I'm too ignorant to discuss such things. So why will we be checking out Mastering the Inner Demon trope with Pinches here. Hopefully he can shed some light on where this trope came from, the history of it. Like I guess what it says about us young men, or us people who were young men.
Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is.
Yep, I knew that was a Carl Jung quote, just off rip. I mean, obviously, whenever you talk about something like this, I mean, especially in Japanese media, in particular the Shin Megami Tensei series, as well as the spin-off Persona series, the Carl Jung inspiration is like incredible. Which, I mean, that might be where that might be partly, or where a lot of the language perhaps comes from. But we'll see. We'll see if Carl Jung features had more of an impact on the Japanese media environment than I had assumed.
Talk about the inner demon trope. Everyone has intrusive thoughts. Those things that pop up in your mind that you're not actually supposed to act on. I, for example, have to desperately resist glazing Jujutsu Kaisen in almost every video. I failed.
Very,
In that way,
yeah, very, very troublesome intrusive thought. Yeah, yeah. Most people have intrusive thoughts about like driving into oncoming traffic or like sleeping with their family members. But no, this guy's got the much worse intrusive thoughts about just glazing his favorite series.
our ability to resist these thoughts and temptations and not simply act on our base desires are exactly what makes us human. But obviously, there can be something incredibly interesting about exploring these intrusive desires. What happens when someone has to struggle against these thoughts, and what happens when they give in? And no better is this represented than in our fiction. Every hero should have a shadow. While some media may make the choice to highlight their characters as perfect beacons of morality that can do no wrong, other stories aren't so afraid to take a fairer approach to their protagonists. They reveal their rage, their deepest fears, and their otherwise more unacceptable elements that surely contrast their status as a hero. To that end, while fictional storytelling gives way to many great metaphors, one of my personal favorite representations of this darkness is that of the inner demon. The inner demon trope is a narrative device where a character is forced to struggle against a darker, hidden element within themselves. This force can take many different forms, from a literal evil demon monster who wants to eat babies sealed inside of their body, to literally the same character design,
Right.
but with evil eyes and the colors slightly shifted.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was going to bring up how Fullmetal Alchemist, one of the most popular shonen, I guess the most popular shonen there is, doesn't actually have an inner demon trope. But then, because the main character Edward Elric doesn't really have anything approaching an inner demon. But then, when you think about it, his father Hohenheim does have, the father dwarf in the glass guy who is kind of like his dark reflection. Literally looks just like him, and I mean, in a lot of ways, Hohenheim kind of is the like secondary main character of Fullmetal Alchemist, especially, I mean, like the what's the word, like the second to last episodes, like ED. I guess the last, even as the last ED itself is kind of showing, kind of taking his perspective on the story. But yeah, interesting idea. But yeah, even a story like Fullmetal Alchemist, it seemingly bucks that trend, has its own little mirror, its own version of the inner demon. Yeah.
At its heart, the trope serves to externalize inner conflicts. Instead of keeping doubt, hatred, or rage as invisible emotions, the story decides to make them tangible, giving them a voice, a form, or even allowing them to be a completely separate character. Because of this poignant and diverse representation of such a core idea to the nature of being human, the inner demon is one of the most engaging tropes within all of fiction. But then we have to ask, how do you make a good representation of the trope? What are some of the best examples of the trope being?
I will say that, while I did love that trope as a kid, like in nowadays I do tend to feel like it's, it's. I think it's partially just because a lot of the stories that feature this are, they're stuff for young men who are just experiencing this stuff for the first time. So it's all new and interesting and on its own. But if you're someone who's seen Bleach and Naruto and I guess Fullmetal Alchemist, you start to have seen all the common executions of that trope, and you're like, okay, something new. I want to see something new. So things like Black Clover, which is a newer. I guess at this point it's not new now, but to a seasoned anime enjoyer like myself, who's been watching it since the fucking 2000s, something like Black Clover can feel a little juvenile, even though it seems like a very popular and well done, beloved show based on the reactions I've seen from fans of it. So it's not like, yeah. So it's probably more just a me being bored of it. I guess I don't know if that's the right word for it, but yeah.
Being used in fiction, and what are some of the things authors get so right, and also what do they get so wrong? Well, in this video, that's exactly what we're going to find out. So stick around, you might just learn something important. Gamer Subs are the proud partners of today's video. I spend way too many late nights writing, editing, and rewatching anime clips. Also, working on games. You guys might get to see one of those eventually. And Gamer Subs is literally the
Man's out
only
here
thing
creating.
keeping me awake for so long. It's 0 calories, way cheaper than energy drinks or coffee, and honestly, it tastes way better too. So if you want to support the channel and try it out for yourself, use my code PINES here at checkout for a discount. And you can even try their sample packs for free if you're
I'm not really a person who drinks anything other than like water and occasional milk or alcohol, but you know, ethical reacts. Let the man get his wait, what's the phrase? I don't know. Let the man get his ad in.
Interested. Links are in the description and pinned comment. Anyway, back to the video.
I don't know about Zangetsu, but I refuse to play horse to a king who's weaker than me. Someone whose uncertainty and hesitation will end up getting us both cut to pieces. If you aren't willing to assert your strength and retain the crown, then I'll destroy you. Which means I'll be king.
Form, ability, and power. Hollow Ichigo is not only one of the most interesting depictions of an inner demon within fiction, but also one of the most famous.
Yeah.
There are countless things that make the character concept engaging. One of the most prevalent is how the inner demon is actually tied to the protagonist. A lot of inner demons are
that was something that I noticed and was thinking about how to phrase it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you know, he's gonna say it, but you know, I gotta get my transformative content in. But yeah, a lot of these. I mean, it is interesting how so many of these inner demons are actually, you know, external things put into the main character, which is an interesting commentary in and of itself. I mean, certain people would say that a lot of the kind of aggression and like I don't know, violent tendencies that young men can struggle with is rather than it being a natural, inherent thing to the male gender, is actually, you know, very sort of manufactured, very put in there by society. And it's kind of interesting. Using that framework, you could have a very interesting read of these Itadori Yujis and Naruto Uzumakis who have their inner demons put into them. Yeah, it definitely makes Ichigo an interesting contrast to that pattern.
Completely separate entities with their own histories and motives, but Hollow Ichigo is inseparable from Ichigo's psyche. That is to say, he is Ichigo stripped down to his most primal core. Like most Zanpakuto spirits, Hollow Ichigo represents a core reflection of Ichigo's inner self. On the surface, Ichigo is a character defined by a simple, reactive goal: to protect those he cares for. Because of this, he's often criticized as a character who doesn't act, but instead only reacts to the world around him. Hollow Ichigo is a doesn't act, but instead only
functional human being right from the beginning. How the hell you're gonna develop that? Damn, exactly why he's the most disliked. Ichigo's a hero is bland. He's literally just a normal guy who happens to have powers. He doesn't have any type of over-the-top personality, trait, or quirk. He got his powers unlocked and was still more or less the same guy. I mean, personally, I think that's partly the writer Tite Kubo's that's on him for not being able to make that character interesting, than it being a problem with functional human beings right from the start. But yeah,
only reacts to the world around him. Hollow Ichigo is a direct rejection of this notion. revealing something deeper in Ichigo's characterization.
Yes, his shadow,
Not an instinct to protect,
we
but
implied
one to
earlier.
revel in battle and to survive. Through every obstacle, that primal hunger for battle grows, despite the fact that it clashes with his otherwise surface-level characterization as a noble hero. This conflict materializes as Hollow Ichigo, smug, selfish, and self-serving, the character who embodies the traits that Ichigo must undertake in order to win. This is highlighted through the process of hollowification. Early in the series, Ichigo constantly risks the threat of losing control of his body and letting the hollow wreak havoc. The inner demon allows this emotional struggle to not just be symbolic, but a tangible force that actually carries consequences within the narrative. And I think the final twist with Ichigo's inner demon is excellent. Hollow Ichigo is not something that Ichigo must simply expel or seal away. He is the very foundation of Ichigo's power. The blade is me. Rejecting him is to reject the very force that has kept Ichigo alive. So the answer is not purification, but instead integration. To move forward, Ichigo must accept White's existence, not as a separate entity, but as an integral part of himself. And I believe there is something about our own personalities and dynamics that can be learned from that. As C.G. Jung puts it, the most terrifying...
I mean, come on now, put some respect on his name. He's not just C.G. Jung, he's like Carl, I think, Gustav Jung, but yeah. Father of... Yeah, well, not modern psychology, but definitely was a big name in the space, right up there with Freud, rather with Sigmund Freud. Put together a lot of the... I mean, that's where he's the guy who coined the term introvert and extrovert, you know, and among other things like collective unconscious and other such things.
Thing is to accept oneself completely.
Destroy everything. Erase anything that causes you pain. Give me your soul, your spirit, your vital essence. Give it to me. And in exchange, I will rescue you from your pain.
Hatred incarnate, the nine-tailed fox. From the very beginning, Kurama is portrayed much less like a character and more as a living weapon of mass destruction. I mean, that's partially because he can literally fire mountain-sized bombs from his mouth. Kurama is presented as an unstoppable force, a lawnmower tearing through both child soldiers as an unstoppable force.
One frame
a lawnmower
man.
tearing through both
Let me hear.
mouth. Kurama is presented as an unstoppable force, a lawnmower tearing through both child soldiers and unsuspecting families alike. Naruto inherits this overwhelming curse at birth, being the container for such an immense monster. Naturally, his entire village rejects him, and that rejection and loneliness ends up being one of the core defining traits of his character.
Yeah, they really were fixing to turn him into another Gaara, but for the fucking nine-tailed fox. Can you imagine? That'd be it. At the end of everyone.
The Nine-Tails isn't some apathetic beast looking to survive. It is the embodiment of directed hatred and malice, and Naruto, as its host, is forced to carry that burden. Early within the story, the two's relationship is defined by moments of both rage and despair. Naruto's bloody red chakra cloak becomes a visual marker for when he loses control, allowing the years of anger and loneliness to begin seeping into him. My favorite visualization of this is how the more Naruto taps into Kurama's power, the more animalistic he becomes, until at the very end, he's nearly indistinguishable from that very monster that he hates.
That was a moment. Watching that shit on I don't even remember what the sub site I was watching it on is called anymore. It was like 2012 or whatever. You know, seeing that shit after coming back from school on I think it was Thursday. They updated every week. That was incredible.
Kurama acts much like a devil on his shoulder, whispering and tempting Naruto with promises of power in exchange for control. The bargain is simple. The more Naruto surrenders himself to the Nine Tails, the more strength he'll be given to win. This dynamic is that of power at the cost of identity, and this idea defines much of Naruto's early struggles. But the payoff of the Nine Tails character is one of the points where Naruto's story truly shines.
Yeah, it does get a little, sometimes it does feel a little Saturday morning cartoonish to see this man fist bumping a fucking Nine-Tails fox, but it's like, I mean, you know, when you do proper integration like that, yeah, it can to an onlooker, to an unenlightened onlooker, it can look and feel corny as fuck. But yeah, it's part of that classic, I guess, internet saying about, you know, it's better to be cringe and free than shackle yourself to the struggle of never ever doing anything or saying anything that could be perceived as cringe. It's not a fun life.
Points where Naruto's story truly shines. As much as I joke about the theme of the story being hard work beats talent and other Naruto slander to like get rage bait, I'm not so media literate that I actually think
yeah, this video did catastrophic damage to people's understanding here. That's a very common phenomenon, I guess, where, you know, someone will make one incredibly popular video that, you know, does describe some actual issues, hopefully, then, you know, fans and not even fans, just people who are peripherally aware of the series and are checking out I guess a video to learn about the series. They end up getting their fundamental perception of the series based on kind of its worst flaws, basically its worst moments.
We think these are the cores of the story. The truly overwhelmingly present theme of Naruto is about breaking the cycle of hatred.
Yeah.
It's about meeting years, if not centuries, of bloodshed and hatred with compassion, trust, and forgiveness. That message plays out through characters like Obito and Sasuke, but nowhere is it more clear than with Naruto's bond with Kurama. Naruto's
I love how this motherfucker changes his character design to become more heroic. I mean, I guess if you're a tailed beast, that's probably within the cards. Like your appearance does reflect your soul.
Than with Naruto's bond with Kurama.
It does feel a little on the face, though.
Much more than just mastering the Nine Tails power. It's also about transforming their relationship from one of vapid enemies to that of lifelong friends. Unlike other inner demons who must be sealed, subjugated, or erased, Naruto must come to understand and befriend the Nine Tails. In that way, the trope is fully redefined. The goal is not rejection, it's reconciliation. In the end, Naruto and Kurama show us that our demons, external or internal, aren't always something to be defeated. Sometimes they are something to be understood, and in doing so, the story delivers one of the most enduring lessons of kindness, redemption, and above all else, never giving up on your friends.
I mean, hell, I would even say that more often than not, the way of dealing with our demons is by reconciling with them. Like, you can't really destroy your demons. I don't even know what that would look like.
You really should have just burnt everything down. Burnt everything down to a cinder without giving.
Having a little difficulty with my headset. It was running out of power, so I was trying to plug it in. Maybe I should just use the auxiliary cord. Yeah, I'll do that. I have a lot of fun editing to do for my last stream, I guess.
Never giving up on your friends.
You really should have just burnt everything down. Burnt everything down to a cinder without giving it a thought. Casting aside race, future, everything until you finally reached Satoru Gojo. That hunger to seize your ideals, that's what you were truly lacking. Maybe you're right. Even so, you managed to entertain me a bit. I fought humans, sorcerers, and cursed spirits 1,000 years ago, and you were still one of the better ones I fought. Stand proud. You are strong.
I'm just gonna be blunt. Sukuna is one of the most fascinating and refreshing depictions of an inner demon in all of modern shonen. Unlike Kurama or Holo Ichigo, who represent suppressed aspects of their protagonist's psyches, hatred and instinct respectively, Sukuna is not a mirror of Yuji Itadori at all. If anything, the two characters are complete opposites. Sukuna is a fully formed character with his own history, motives, and personality. So while watching Jujutsu Kaisen, I kept waiting for the classic moment, the point in which the hero and their demon briefly align, gaining power for a goal that benefits both characters.
Yeah, that did
moment
not happen.
doesn't exist in Jujutsu Kaisen. Even when Sukuna does lend Yuji some strength for what seems like a common goal, these situations only ever twist in Sukuna's favor, often leaving Yuji far worse than before. And that's what makes Sukuna so compelling. With Kurama or Holo Ichigo, the threat is always that possibility of losing control and going on a catastrophic rampage. Keyword on possibility here. In effect, the fallout is always extremely minimal. Maybe a friend gets punched or
Right.
injured, but these wounds always heal after a single arc at most, and the story completely moves on. Like, Holo Ichigo literally stabs Uryu through the chest, and that injury is almost instantly undone. Sukuna is different. When he takes over Yuji, terrible
Right? Oh my
things
god.
happen.
Oh my
He kills
fucking
Yuji
god.
outright. He permanently maims a core character, and he wipes an entire city filled with civilians off the map.
I mean,
His threats feel real because he's not some metaphorical shadow or some misunderstood beast. Sukuna is an actual demon, willing and eager to murder everyone around him the moment he gains control. And by far, Sukuna's strongest point is how he isn't just an internal obstacle. He's the actual central antagonist. His actions ripple out into the larger plot with massive consequences. That's something I always wanted from other inner demons and stories, for their influence to extend far beyond the protagonist's personal growth and actually begin to shape the fabric of the story itself. And Sukuna absolutely delivers on that. But the most interesting dynamic born from Sukuna's existence as an inner demon is the way he and Yuji Itadori's ideals clash, showing a stark reflection at the heart of Jujutsu Kaisen's themes. This series is mainly about finding meaning in the face of an inevitably cruel world. Yuji begins the story with an impossible optimism, believing every life is sacred and that every person deserves a proper death. Sukuna is the embodiment of the exact opposite idea, a hedonistic cruelty that destroys lives with complete indifference, a mockery to the very ideas of dignity and meaning. Sukuna could literally say, hey, I kind of feel like crushing a baby's skull today, and he'd literally just
Right.
go out and do it. Thus, Yuji's main point of growth is learning to accept that, yes, some deaths will be unfair, sudden, and horrifying. But the value of someone's life does not come from seeing how someone dies, it comes from the very act of living at all, and choosing to appreciate the mundanities that come about from choosing to go on despite the overwhelming cruelty around you. That tension, Yuji's humanity versus Sukuna's hedonism, is what makes the relationship one of the most compelling versions of the inner demon that I've ever seen put to pen. The inner demon trope is almost impossible not to love. Aside from the edgy coolness of having a secret, powerful demon inside of you, okay, pause. It's
No.
also a symbolic version of one of
What's
the
that
most
supposed to mean?
universal conflicts that any human can go through. That is, the battle with ourselves. Kurama, Holo Ichigo, and Sukuna each embody different interpretations of this struggle, whether it be our suppressed nature or through juxtapositions of a character's core beliefs and traits. Together, these stories show the true versatility of this trope. It can be symbolic, psychological, or even literal, but they always work because they externalize a simple truth about being human. We all carry shadows, instincts, or fears that threaten to consume us. And whether you may choose to reject, conquer, or reconcile with them, those choices will inevitably define who you are. And that is the power of the inner demon trope. It isn't just about fighting monsters. It's about coming to terms with what you'll do and what you'll have to do when you realize that the monstrous aspect is actually a core part of who you are. Thank you for watching. What's your favorite inner demon in fiction? Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. Don't forget to top off your gamer sub supply with my link in the description to support the channel. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
All right, very interesting video. I was hoping, I was hoping for a little more insight into where this trope came from. Yes, everything he says is true, but why specifically is shonen anime have such a consistent, language with inner demon stuff. There are other, I've seen versions of this sort of thing in like shoujo even, and I want to say in Western media, but I really honestly cannot think of any examples at all. But yeah, just yeah, it was a good video in either case. Yeah, definitely. All right, now we're moving on to our last reaction for the foreseeable future. Okay, we are here with Why Great Characters Don't Need Main Character Energy by Shonen Oji. Reading that title, I'm reminded of the idea of like a contrast. Something that's central to basically all art. It may be the case that everybody is like a main character in their own story, but everybody can't be the main character in a given story. You need emotional hierarchy to create, things like tension and relief, expectations and payoffs. You need contrast for those things to even be perceivable at all. And great characters who are not main characters are a vital component of that, a vital example of that. I guess we'll see how. Okay, Shonen is probably not his name. It's probably like his title. We'll see how Oji, explores this topic.
Are side characters as important as main characters? Main
Yeah,
characters
yeah,
drive
obviously.
the plot, but good side
Nope,
characters
not really a
drive the
question.
main character and flesh out the rest of the story. And in the case of Dawn, that's why Momo's friends Miko and Muko are simultaneously the least relevant and most valuable characters in the
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they kind of fill that role as like a modern day Greek chorus, at least in Dandadan. That's another big role. Side characters can play. You know, they can be kind of an audience surrogate.
story. So in this video, I'm going to analyze Dawn's best side characters, discuss how they drive the plot without distracting from the main story, and explain why main characters are only as good as their side characters. And on that note, we need to start by talking about Dawn's main characters and why they aren't that important, because what
Damn.
Miko and Muko show us every time they appear in the story is that they are just as important to the main plot line of Okarun and Momo as the main characters are, which might seem confusing because as the main characters, Okarun and Momo should be the only ones leading the story. But there's
Well, I mean, to a naive, maybe dare I say, bad writer, sure, but you know, it's the people who know what's up. That is not the case at all.
stories like Dragon Ball where one character basically carries the whole story, and then
I mean,
stories like
fair.
Dawn where we never really rely on a single character for everything that happens. We can see this in the growing cast of characters, and especially in the fact that Dawn is led by two characters who always depend on each other and only grow because of each other. As early as episode 1, Tatsu establishes a central theme of characters supporting and complementing each other, as opposed to everyone supporting a metaphorical Michael Jordan of the team
Oh,
who
yeah.
does all the work.
Like an indirect soul leveling slander.
The series is built on the idea that no single person carries the story and everyone needs each other. By doing so, it sets up the story so that every character feels important. But that does create an important problem. If no single character carries the story and every character is important, then wouldn't all the characters feel equally unimportant? Like if everyone is the hero of their own story, then how do you know who the story is really about? It's actually
Oh wow, I did not realize there were whole ass Reddit like articles basically about this question. But I mean, you know, it's like I said at the beginning, you create contrast and like hierarchy to create these sort of intelligible emotional systems that people can like really grab onto and I don't know, enjoy, I guess.
been a recurring discussion for Dawn fans in the past, as there's been many debates about who the real main character is. Part of
Yeah, well, the
that is
real main
people not
character, please
realizing
stand
that
up.
They both are, but it does support
Wait,
this idea.
that's crazy. I mean, there are people out there who don't realize that this is like a dual protagonist story. Like they're out here thinking that either Okarun or Momo are the main character. How can you be thinking shit like that even after the first episode?
Idea that the main characters need to feel like main characters, or else fans will have a hard time following them. Thankfully, this is why Miko and Muko are so important, because what these two characters show us is that you can have side characters that clearly come second to the main characters, but still feel just as important. Because when we meet these two after Momo gets dumped, they feel like random characters that we'll probably never see again. But then we see them again when Momo meets Okarun. At this point, we still view them as random side characters, but what we don't realize is that this moment sets up a long-running trend of Miko and Muko always making some kind of contribution to each step of Okarun and Momo's relationship. In other words, Momo and Okarun's relationship is partly because of Miko and Muko, yet we don't even realize it because they work so well
True.
as supporting characters. A prime example of this is when Momo and Okarun accidentally kiss after bumping into each other, and before they can awkwardly change subjects, Miko and Muko were there to catch Momo kissing a boy. What's important to note about their reaction is that while they are shocked, they don't tease Momo right away. All they say is that Momo should have mentioned Okarun earlier, but Momo is naturally overwhelmed by their reaction and impulsively rejects Okarun before storming off. The two friends immediately look at each other as they realize that Momo is closer to Okarun than they thought. This is the first example of how Miko and Muko always seem to be present at each step of Okarun and Momo's relationship, but it also proves that they always seem to be partly responsible for pushing that relationship forward.
I mean, they really are playing the role of Greek chorus audience surrogate, really pushing these kids along who otherwise would probably have a very classic but frustrating anime quote unquote romance where it's like they haven't even kissed until the end of season 2, and then there's some memory eraser event or whatever where they're like, oh sorry, the fireworks were too loud, I didn't hear you confessing to me or whatever nonsense like that.
Immediately support Momo and recognize that Okarun is someone she really likes, which sets them up to challenge Momo in the next scene when all of her girlfriends are teasing her. Actually, what's funny is that none of the girls actually bully Momo. It only seems like bullying because they're challenging Momo. In this moment, Momo is embarrassed about her feelings for Okarun and doesn't know what she's feeling. But as we just saw, Miko and Muko can already see that they're more than just friends. When they call Okarun Momo's boyfriend, it's obviously meant to tease Momo, but the underlying intent is to get Momo to be honest about her feelings. This is why when Momo rejects Okarun again, Miko tells Momo that she's in the wrong and that she's only being so defensive because she likes Okarun so much. This then helps Momo to see that she's in the wrong before she gains the confidence to open up around Okarun again. What we take away from this scene is that Miko and Muko are an invaluable part of the story because not only do they challenge Momo so that she can grow and be happy with Okarun, but they also do it in a way where it feels like Momo can take all of the credit. And this is what I mean when I say you can have great side characters that feel like side characters. With any story, there's this constant struggle of balancing the focus between main characters and side characters. If you focus too much on every character being the hero of their own story, then it starts to feel like the main characters aren't as important as they used to be. On the other hand, if you place all of the focus on the main characters or their immediate friends, you run the risk of leaving behind side characters and making them feel completely pointless, which is why it's so cool
I've never even
side characters and making them feel
I've never even seen half these motherfuckers. Like, what is this a robot? Or I mean, obviously I recognize Mr. Toto himself. I've never watched Jujutsu Kaisen, so that's probably partly why I don't recognize the characters. But I mean, obviously I recognize Mr. Idol fan Supreme.
Which is why it's so cool that Dandadan has characters like Miko and Muko, because they remind us that side characters don't need main character energy, and they can be just as important while still directing their efforts to the main characters. In fact, it's actually better to write side characters this way, because whenever they support what the main characters are doing, it drives us as readers to further invest in the main characters. A great example of this is when Miko and Muko show up in chapter 26. Actually, this is the first time anime fans started to realize just how iconic these two are, because it's when Miko does her little Sherlock Holmes routine. First, they show up after the fight against Nessie. They completely missed the fight. The show's over. But then they show up in a seemingly unimportant scene. Except it's actually pretty important. When they walk in, they call out Okarun by his name, rather than just calling him the Geek Boy, showing that they're on a first name basis now. Miko then does her routine where by process of elimination, she decides that Momo must be jealous of Ira getting Okarun's attention. It's funny because they don't have any real context, but they more or less figured out everything that went down
Wild
with Okarun
scene.
and Ira. And in the background, you can see Muko teasing Okarun. The irony is that Miko and Muko show up after all of the action, but they still affirm Okarun as Momo's not a boyfriend, and they even recognize Momo's feelings again, reminding us that they're always there supporting Okarun and challenging Momo. The same thing happens again when they meet Gigi and he implies that he's dating Momo. Whereas they were rushing to ship Momo with a new boy before, now they're challenging Gigi because they already support Okarun. This is a great example of side characters doing the work, so to speak, because Okarun isn't even in the scene, but he scores points because of the way Miko and Muko defend him. It shows us that he's clearly left a good impression on them, and they like him enough that they'll even defend him when he's nowhere to be seen. It makes us as readers only like Okarun even more. We even see this kind of thing.
Isn't there a social phenomenon or dynamic, whatever, about that? I don't remember the name or something, but it's like, you know, like social proof. Yeah, it's like manufactured social proof kind of thing.
Again, when Momo and Okarun run into Miko and Muko after the Evil Eye arc, they ask Momo about the mysterious volcano incident, and when she claims not to know about it, Miko mentions how this is the kind of thing Momo and Okarun love to talk about. It's a seemingly minor comment, but it stands out as another example of Miko and Muko taking an interest in Okarun. They went from Geek Boy to Okarun to now they even know what his interests are and support them. There's a growing familiarity that happens between Okarun and Momo's friends without him really trying, and it supports Okarun as one of the main characters by showing the kind of influence he has on surrounding characters. They support him even without him really doing anything to win them over besides being who he is. And really, that's the importance of good side characters. The reason side characters are so important is because they support the main characters without distracting from the main characters as they drive the story. And there's no better example of this than the scene at the Maid Cafe. It starts with Momo declaring she's going to get a job, to which her friends immediately challenge her by pointing out how she's always quitting her new jobs. But when she claims things are different this time and takes the maid job, Miko and Muko continue to challenge her by dragging Okarun out with them. First of all, they literally drag Okarun out of his comfort zone and take him to Momo's job. They could have just teased Momo on their own, which is actually kind of implied when the other maid says welcome back, suggesting that they've already been here before. But by taking Okarun, this places all of the focus on him, even though they're the ones who orchestrated this whole thing. It also shows us just how much they support Okarun because they go out of their way to show Okarun Momo's new job.
Good lord, look at these goobers over here. Yeah, classic friend energy right there.
They want to see Okarun and Momo be happy. At the same time, they also come here to challenge Momo and test her commitment to her new job. They do this by teasing her as she meets requests like pouring tea, but also in the way they bring Okarun so that Momo has to stay committed to her job in front of the person she's the most vulnerable around. But the best part comes after the fact when Miko and Muko try to take Okarun home, but he stays behind so he can be with Momo. The two seem genuinely surprised, implying that they didn't even intend to push Okarun to look after Momo and are sincerely impressed with what he does. Of course, this is when Okarun offers to wait for Momo, claims to go home when she declines, shows up anyway because he didn't want her to walk home alone, and then the two of them walk home holding hands. The beauty of this scene is that Okarun gets all of the credit by staying behind even when Momo said it was okay, and it feels like he completely earned it when Momo holds his hand, but the reality is that this never would have happened if it weren't for Miko and Muko.
Yeah,
Miko and Muko
real unsung hero type shit.
Okarun out of his comfort zone so that he could see Momo outside of their usual routine, leading to Okarun putting himself out there. And they also challenged Momo to prove that she really has matured, which then leads her to growing closer to Okarun and proving that she is a completely different character from when she was crying about her old boyfriend in the first chapter. This proves that Miko and Muko are just as important to the main relationship as Okarun and Momo, but it also shows us why side characters don't need to have main character energy. By driving the plot in a completely peripheral role, Miko and Muko gain the favor of fans, while still letting Okarun and Momo take all of the credit as they grow throughout the story. They really have no relevance to the plot, but they're a constant in the story that always support Okarun and Momo at every step of their relationship. And that's why every good character needs great side characters.
All right. Nice video. Definitely a good example. I mean, Don Don's kind of a media darling at this point, so I'm sure that let me see that. Yeah, I'm sure that contributed to the 21K views this video has earned. But yeah. Yeah, definitely agree with the main conceit of the video. I mean, I basically said as much at the beginning. Didn't have too much to say about it, so I probably not gonna make this its own video. And yeah, I guess with that, yeah, I'm not really gonna be able to react to anything. Stretching. Probably not gonna be able to react to anything more, given we have about 20 minutes before noon. I got other things to do. Yeah, so with that, I guess that's kind of the end of these reacts for the foreseeable future. I mean, they were not. I mean, I wasn't expecting any crazy growth or anything, but yeah, they were definitely not popular at all. Let me see if I can find the analytics. I mean, yeah, look at this. Videos they're like a week old at this point. They have 0 views. Like, yeah, it's not really worth putting this much effort into it. It's basically getting no traction at all. Despite the fact that apparently I was getting a decent amount of impressions. Like, let me see if I can find. I mean, yeah, I mean, getting like 1,000. Oh, yeah, but I mean, I was getting like 20,000 impressions. People were seeing, so YouTube was doing a good job of getting my videos in front of people's eyes. Just I guess they just weren't. I mean, look at that, 40,000 impressions. Like, yeah, people are seeing my content. It's just they're not clicking on it. So I guess. I mean, I guess I gotta work on my thumbnail game. I gotta work on my viewer retention game. I guess if I'm ever coming back to doing this type of content. But yeah, just interesting things to see. Yeah. With that, yep. Thanks for watching these little react streams for those who did. Like I said, I may come back to them in the future if there's ever, if I ever make it big in the content creation space, and I got old crazy amount of viewers who were like, I don't know, pushing for me to do react content. But yeah, in either case, thank you for watching. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And tomorrow I'll be going all in on my other content, which is writing streams. Probably also gonna replace the reaction streams with a return to drawing. So if you want to see that, I guess look forward to it. And until then, take care.